And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and I'm excited today because today we're talking about the first in a trilogy of games here, Chronicles of Crime, the Millennium Series, 1400. Chronicles of Crime is one of my favorite games. It's a game that uses an app and deduction skills as players cooperatively try to solve a murder mystery. Chronicles of Crime was set in our modern era, although there was some expansions to it that took you back to the 1920s and to kind of an alternate reality of like an Archie style thing. This is a standalone game by itself, and this goes back to France in the 1400s. It adds a new, or slightly new mechanism here. But if you've never played Chronicles of Crime before, have no fear. Let me show you how the game works. For this game, you'll need the free app of Chronicles of Crime, and for this particular one, they have the regular Chronicles of Crime, but there's also 1400. Right now, there's a tutorial, and there are 4 different things you can play. So let's say we want to play the missing pages. It says resume, but I've beaten it already, or I've finished it already. But you can go through and play this, and this one here says download. I played the tutorial on my iPad, but you can see it downloaded pretty quickly. So you can play this on your phone or your iPad. And then when you play it, you'll notice, by the way, that there's some sound effects involved in it. And this is a tutorial that just walks you through exactly how to go through and play the game. It will give you the scenario. When you play through scenario, it will tell you different things, but it will tell you different cards to put on the table. And so there are various different cards. In this particular game, there are vision cards. And so when you have a vision card, You'll get more than one in the scenarios. This is for tutorial, there's just one. And it will show you a picture of something that happens. I'll show you another vision because this doesn't really spoil anything. This is a vision. What does that mean? It shows some characters doing something. This is something that has happened or could happen. And you're going to meet various characters as you go through this game. You have your dog, that's always with you, but there are various characters, and these characters, you'll use the same characters in different scenarios. We'll play something like this lady could be a murderer in one, a victim in another, and a suspect in a third. That may or may not be true. So there are various different people that you'll have, and these people will come and play. Some of them will be at different locations, some of them will be dead, and so this will tell you. So first of all, you'll start with the vision. And then this one here says you're looking to find a ring. And so you're going to go through here, and in this game there's a jewelry card. This will stand for the ring. And you put it in the orange section here if you have the piece of evidence. You put it in the blue section if you know about the piece of evidence and you don't have it. Now, the way the game works here, and I'm going to kind of run through the rest of this stuff here, this is what the app is going to look like most of the time. As the game goes by, you might find different locations. To go to a location, you just scan the QR code here. And this talks about a location. This says I can't go to this location because this particular location is not in this scenario. So there'll be different locations. When you go to a location, it might tell you people are at that location. When you're at a location, you can talk to the people at that location, and you'll scan their QR code. Once you scan the QR code, they'll pop up on screen here. They'll talk to you, and you can ask them questions. You can ask them about themselves. You would scan them again. While you're talking to them, you can ask them about somebody else. You can ask them about a piece of evidence. You can ask them about everything. The thing is, each time you ask them a question, it's going to take up a little bit of time, and you only have so long to finish these. You have plenty of time normally, but you can't. There's also, as the game goes by, you're going to have more and more combinations. But the game is also dynamic. Somebody who might be at one location may move to another location at some point during the game. They may give you a different answer later on in the game depending on what you've discovered. And so as you go to different locations, and there's all different sorts of locations in the game, many of them, some of them you might actually recognize, like here for example is Notre Dame in the game, and here's the bridge and different spots. So each location will have different things happening at it each turn of the game, and there'll be various people at these locations that you can talk to. Another thing that can happen in the game is you can occasionally search a scene. When this happens, one player will take the device and they'll click on search to scene. Now, if you have the 3D goggles, which are sold separately, you can actually stick them on your face and look around like a virtual reality, but you can play without it. And so when this happens, this person's going to look at this and it will show you a 3D scene. Now, you can move the phone around to look at it, or you can just swipe if you want to. And you're looking at these different objects that are in this three-dimensional scene. You're describing the scene to the other players. Meanwhile, the other players have this deck, and as you say things like, you might say, I see some apples. They'll be like, ooh, food. And they're going to pull these cards. You can then scan these cards, and it will tell you if you found a clue or not. Sometimes it will say you found a poison apple. So then I stick this here. This is something I can use as a clue in the future. Or it might, if I look at parchments and papers, it says close, but it's actually a book that's written. You need to scan a different card, a card that's more specific. And a lot of the cards just will say nothing happens, and you've wasted some time looking for them. You can search the room as many times as you want, but again, realizing that it takes time to do so. You can also always go back home. You scan and go home, and you can talk to your uncle the monk. You can ask him about written stuff. He knows information about that. Your sister the merchant, who's an expert on items, and your brother, who's a spy, and he can tell you about people. So these will give you information about those. And you have a dog. You can scan the dog and scan something you found, and the dog might lead you to a new location or to maybe where a person is hiding or something like that. At some point, though, you're going to want to go back home and solve the case. You go home, you'll solve the case, you'll click on solve the case, we'll ask you a series of questions. If you get a couple of the major ones wrong, it will say you don't know enough information. Like if it asks you who's the murderer and you have no idea, then you got to go back out and find more information. But if you know the main answers, they will ask you a series, and then it will give you a score based on how many answers you got correct or incorrect. And then the scenario is over. There's also things that can change based on what you've done. There was one scenario where something bad happened, and it was my fault because I told a piece of information to the wrong person, which I should not have. So that's kind of an overview of how the game works. Component-wise, I love these inserts that they have, everything that shows you exactly what goes where. The artwork is good. I love the artwork on these cards. You don't know what it means. I'm not spoiling anything by showing these cards to you because you will use these visions as time goes by. And even again, as I show you all these different people, this doesn't spoil anything because this guy might look like a thug, and maybe he is a thug in a scenario, but he also might be the hero of the next scenario. So there's a lot of different characters that are in this game. And then of course there's a huge variety of item cards, and then there are specific item cards which may be used in a scenario, like maybe a scenario involves a jug of apple cider. So this would have that in that scenario. And these are specific to some scenarios. And the board is okay. It's just a spot to keep stuff. And I really like the location artwork. Now, just so you know, this is the first in a trilogy it's the Millennium series. So there is a box you can get that you can put all 3 games in the same box. But you don't need anything else. You don't need the original Chronicles of Crime as a standalone game. First of all, my opinion of Chronicles of Crime is extremely high. I love the game. I think it's one of my favorite games. So I obviously love the mechanisms in this. It's so much fun to me. The app, I find that the game works best with 3 or fewer people. You can play with more, and the discussion is fun. I've actually soloed through this. Playing through it is okay. I enjoyed that, but I'd rather have at least one other person. This is a game I like to play with my wife because we can bounce ideas off each other. I think they're having an affair. Oh, look, these people. I found that when I play this game with people who like to watch criminal procedurals on TV, this is right up their alley because that's what this is like. And so it's so entertaining to do that. The 3D thing of looking in a room is cool, but they don't overdo it. I think at max I don't know that I've ever had to look at more than 2 rooms. But you do sometimes go back to those rooms and go, there must be something we missed, and look for that other piece of evidence. And so you look at that evidence, and at first you're like, well, this seems obvious. You just ask everybody about everybody. But as time goes by, that changes. And in fact, in one of the scenarios, there was a piece of information that I knew that the one person was like, listen, you probably shouldn't tell everybody this information. I was like, I want to ask this person about this, but if I ask them, I might give away too much information. And I really found that to be fascinating. I love the dynamicness of the game. You know, where you could talk to somebody and you come back and they're gone or they've been murdered. You know, or if you go to a different location in the morning or at night, different people will be there, different things will happen. Like there's a market, for example. You go there in the morning, the market's open and bustling. You go there at night, it's closed, but maybe there's a person there to meet you or something. So I found that stuff to be fun and interesting, and I love it. There's 4 scenarios in here, and if it's anything like the first Chronicles of Crime, people can make their own scenarios, and you download that, and they have more that you can probably buy as time goes by, and there's an expansion out already, which will add more scenarios to this. Now, specifically about 1400. The vision cards are the big deal in this one. I mean, you have your 3 people you can ask questions to. That's very similar to the original one. And you have the dog. The dog works slightly different. The dog is just fun to have around, and it's constantly referenced by every character in the game. They're like, oh, I love your dog, or don't let your dog into the kitchen, or whatever. I find that to be interesting, and the dog works just like another person finding things. But the vision cards is what makes this one different. The vision cards are fascinating. I have yet to solve one of these cases without using the vision card, because I look at the vision card and I'll go, that person looks like they're having an argument in this picture, so they must not like each other, but they didn't say they didn't like each other, so let's follow that angle. And what's interesting about Chronicles of Crime is you make the case up in your head. You'll go, well, that person obviously wants to marry that person, and this person seems suspicious, so I think this is what happened. And you make up this, what could be an outlandish story, but sometimes it's correct. And as you learn more and more clues, you're like, oh, I thought that guy was evil, but maybe he's just a jerk. And I love that aspect. The vision cards kind of reveal that, and we use those to kind of build the story off of. And so that, to me, is a fascinating aspect of this game with those vision cards, and I like it a lot for that regard. Now, one negative for me, and this is a Tom Vasel thing, I don't particularly find 1400 France to be that interesting. I'm really excited about the next one. It's in the 1900s, and the one after that, 2400s in the future. Ooh, and then there's even an expansion that ties all 3 together. I still like it. I still love it. It's fine. But I don't know. There's just something about that particular setting that doesn't appeal to me. But it might appeal to you. And even though I'm not a big fan of the setting, I still have a blast playing these. They're still really fun. And I'm still really mad about what happened in my last game, because I missed there's such an obvious thing that I missed. But, you know, as you go through it, at the end, it tells you what happened in the stories and things. It's cool. It's a great game. I highly recommend it. Chronicles of Crime, the Millennium Series, 1400. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent.